Yes, guys, I'm Si. Welcome to Cardiff City World and welcome to episode 6 of The Rebuild. And this episode is focused on one thing, but it's a very, very large thing, and that is how do Cardiff City build on the foundations being set with Brian Barry Murphy's appointment. I'm Si, as I say, this is Cardiff City World, Bluebirds content 7 days a week. And we are going to jump straight into this episode of The Rebuild. And look, Brian Barry Murphy is here, he is in. A bold appointment, a shift in identity, and hopefully a revolution on the pitch is underway. But without evolution off the pitch, it will collapse. So today on Rebuilding Cardiff City, we're diving deep into the club structure, from the coaching, staff, set-piece specialists, to data analysts, to transition coaches, technical directors. This is a full breakdown of the people and positions that will make or break not just the Brian Barry Murphy era, but the long-term future of Cardiff City. It's time to get with the modern game and what the modern game demands. So why does structure matter? Well, let's look at it beyond the dugout, he says. Let's be clear, modern football clubs aren't just run by a manager, a couple of coaches and a physio anymore. The most progressive EFL coaches, the likes of Ip.6, Plymouth, Oxford, Sunderland, they've built ecosystems in and around their managers. They have evolved from the inside out. So if Brian Barry Murphy is to succeed at the Cardiff City Stadium, we need to match that philosophy with elite level support staff, infrastructure, and most importantly, vision. We'll start at the bottom, right? The coaching team, the brains, the specialists, the football nerds. You begin with the dugout because that's the logical place to start. Brian Barry Murphy has already brought in Lee Riley. That's his right-hand man from Manchester City and, of course, Rochdale. But that's got to be just the beginning. A modern coaching team in 2025 is multi-dimensional. There are a lot of essential coaching roles that make or break match days, day-to-day help and support for the manager, but also for the assistant manager, because a lot of the time the assistant manager or the number 2 will do a lot of the heavy lifting. And there's been discussions around Brian Barry Murphy's coaching staff, with obviously only Lee Riley officially being in at the moment. I'm led to believe, now I wouldn't say this for definite, but I've been sort of led to believe that there's one more guy coming in who's a Brian Barry Murphy guy, and then we will fill it up with maybe our young, exciting coaches, the likes of Matt Bloxham, maybe Tom Hutton, the young coaches that finished the season last year with Aaron Ramsey. That's exciting, that's a good fit, I don't mind that. But I want to look today at some of the roles that maybe Cardiff City don't utilise. So let's start with a couple. Set piece coach. It's not a luxury anymore. It's a necessity. You know, years ago, people would raise eyebrows at a set piece coach, and only certain clubs would have it. But most clubs have a set piece coach now. Clubs like Brentford and Nottingham Forest have won promotion because of elite set piece routines. Same as Villa. The traits that you need in a role like that, you need to be data literate. You need to be obsessed with timing and movement and patterns and deception. Can you create and drill offensive and defensive routines on a weekly basis that allows your team to get the upper hand on match day? Our XG from set pieces last season was the bottom third of the league. This is a role that would literally pay for itself, not only defensively but also in goals. Another role which I think could be really, really handy is a possession coach, a build-up specialist, if you like. Brian Barry Murphy is, of course, he's about structure, fluidity, rotation, playing out under pressure. He wants press-resistant players. He wants people to be able to cope with receiving the ball in tight spaces and moving it quickly to move the opposition around the pitch where they don't want to be. So what traits do you need to be a possession coach or a build-up specialist? Well, you need tactical clarity for a start. You need to be comfortable using tools like Huddle and Tactical Pad and other apps that can benefit this type of coaching role. You also need to be able to translate what it looks good for an elite football team or what may look good on paper into a League One context. That takes a certain mind and a certain type of person. Then you're looking at the fitness and conditioning coach is massive for me. Like, this is something that Cardiff City really struggled with over probably the last couple of seasons, is fitness. The players don't look fit enough to run for 90 minutes. That's a massive problem, because ultimately no Brian Barry Murphy system is going to work if the players aren't fit enough to press, rotate, and then recover and do it all over again. So again, we'll look at the traits that are needed for a fitness coach or a conditioning coach to really drive home what they're good at. They need to be tailored with data-led programming. You need to be able to use the GPS or the Catapult or whichever system you use. I think Cardiff use Catapult. You need to be able to collaborate well with medical and the tactical staff. You need to be a go-between on that side of things. You probably need to be very fluent in return to play protocols and fatigue signs that players are in the red zone, signs that players are struggling, they need a break, they need to come out, whatever it may be. You have to be really spot on with that. There cannot be any switching off. A fitness and conditioning coach is such a vital role that I'd be shocked if Cardiff City don't appoint somebody in that type of role. Obviously, you've got the goalkeeping coach. Currently, I think it's Gavin Ward, although he's been linked with a few other jobs, so I'm not really sure what is going to happen with that role. Maybe that's the one that Brian Barry Murphy brings in, who's one of his guys. I don't know. But modern keepers must do more than just stop shots. They have to be able to initiate attacks. They have to be able to play with their feet. In a Brian Barry Murphy system, that's going to be a vital part of the game. So again, we look at those traits. What does a good goalkeeping coach need to support Brian Barry Murphy? Well, they need to be proficient in footwork and high starting positions for a start. They need to be familiar with build-out drills, under pressure, and teaching the goalkeeper how to receive the ball under pressure and use it safely. They need to be able to work on the psychological side with young modern keepers. We've got a couple of really special young keepers. They're not ready for first team football yet, but they may be in a couple of years if you get the right people working with them. And then let's move to the player development side, the individual coach, if you like. Look, each player is a project. Every player is an individual. They all need a plan. They all need to be able to have a clear idea of, we're going to do this, this, and this to achieve this. Whether that's a 12-month plan, a 6-month plan, whatever it may be. Now, we all know that planning isn't Cardiff City's strong suit. But what I will give them credit for, particularly in the development staff, the 21s, the likes of Bloxham, the likes of Gavin Chesterfield, Darren Pearce, they have a very clear plan for each individual player and what they want them to achieve during that period. We need to bring that into the first team. You need to get this type of player development coach, I guess, in with the first teams. They need to focus on technical one-on-one sessions, detail orientated. I want to see them micro managing any errors from games and going over it. I want to see them teaching them or coaching them about movement and scanning. They need to be able to collaborate not just with Brian Barry Murphy, but the analysis staff on those personal development plans, those plans to achieve the absolute most out of every single player, whether that's your star player or whether that's a player who's not played much. They all have to have goals and a way, targets to get to that goal. I mentioned the analysis team. Analysis and intelligence staff are vital, but you can turn that insight into a massive advantage. And to me, in 2025 at least, this is where the game is really won. It's not just on a pitch, whereas you can get so much done before the whistle even goes. You can talk analysis, data, opposition prep. It's so vital, but yet so useful to a team, to a manager, to an assistant manager, to everyone. You have to have a head of performance analysis. That guy will be the brains behind Brian Barry Murphy's match plan. Between Brian Barry Murphy, Lee Riley, and the head of performance analysis, they will come up with a plan, what they want to do, how they want to get there. But also, the head of performance analysis would be the guy who turns Brian Barry Murphy's plan into a clear, strategic idea and plan with the tech side, the training side, the analysis side. He will come up with a plan. The brains behind the match plan, like I said. He needs to be able to analyze games in real time, that you see them with the tablets and everything, and during games. They need to be able to pick up on certain players maybe struggling or having a bit of a nightmare during the game, or they're doing well, so we should target something during the game. They have to be able to do it in real time, but they all also have to be able to prepare a clean tactical report pre and post match to the manager, so that they can then build and utilize those. The previously we talked about the individual plans for players. Well, this is how you add and subtract from those. They need to be able to communicate clearly, not just stats this, stats that. They need to be able to explain what they mean, how they correlate to the game situation, to training, to day-to-day life, whatever it may be. They have to be able to not just churn out a load of stats. And then on top of that sort of head of performance analysis, you're going to need an opposition scout or a tactical analyst. They're going to go, their sole job is to watch every single opponent that Cardiff City will come up against. But they have to do it through Brian Barry Murphy's eyes. They have to be obsessed with patterns, triggers, shapes. They have to be able to break down film and present key threats to the squad, to the coaches, whoever they need to. And they need to be able to do that in a way that they can watch a 90-minute game and they can make it very detail orientated and break it down into small chunks that's easy to digest and easy to put across in a meeting or a team talk. They also need to be able to do the same for weak spots, to exploit weak points of the other team. It's vital, and as I say, this type of analysis is so important in 2025. And then you've got a data integration analyst. Now that sounds like a weird one, I know, but this guy is the bridge between the numbers and the stats and the pitch. He is the one who's going to be comfortable with Y-Scout, with Instat, with StatBomb, and more. He's going to work with the recruitment team, he's going to work with the coaches, and he's going to create data-backed packages for everything. For players they want, for players they've got, for players they might want in the future, for academy players, for opposition. They have to understand all types of metrics: XG, XA, XT, packing rate, PDA, PPDA, and much, much more. They have to be able to explain those things, communicate those things, and talk to the coaches, the staff, the players, to break it all down. It's a vital, vital role, and it's one that, as I say, is the bridge between the coaches, the recruitment staff, and the players. Sports science, rehab, injury prevention. So we did an episode on this and how we could think outside the box and use things like cryotherapy and stuff like that. But fitness recovery and resilience is like obviously so vital, but Cardiff have struggled with it. It's not just about avoiding injuries, it's about reducing the risk of injuries, maximising repeat performances in a good way. Keep players fit, you get the best out of them. Look after them, you avoid them getting hurt. I don't think it's rocket science in some ways, but obviously it's very scientific in another way. Essential medical and science roles that I think we have to absolutely, and we might have some of these, of course. Head of sports science. And a head of sports science is going to do things. He's going to track the loading of players, the sprint distance, the distance covered, the deceleration data. He's going to set the thresholds for players who are high risk or have repetitive injuries or a bit of an injury prone player. He's going to know Brian Barry Murphy's style inside out. but he's also got to be able to demand constant movement. But he's also got to be able to demand to Brian Barry Murphy that player needs to come out for a bit. That player needs to have a day off. That player needs to only play an hour today, whatever it may be. And then they prepare accordingly. It's all about communication. It's all about these different roles working together and all working in the same direction. And this is it, right? Under Brian Barry Murphy, we are going to have a revolution, one way or another, on the pitch. But what I think we should be doing is having an evolution right alongside that revolution, and just kind of all bring it up together to make the club what it can be. Obviously the club's got a physio, but I think having a head physio, who's a bit of a rehab specialist, could be really important. The sorts of things that they're going to do is that they're going to be exceptional at planning their players' return to action after injuries. They have to be completely transparent with the players and the staff in terms of where a player is in injury and recovery. They also have to work alongside the fitness coaches to track any soft tissue risk when they start running for the first time. As they build up through the levels coming back from injury, there has to be the lead physio or the rehab specialist, the fitness coaches, the conditioning coaches. They all have to work together to get these players not just back fit, but remain fit. A nutritionist is an interesting one. I'm sure they've got a chef or a nutritionist or some sort of thing, but it's not just about like meal prep and macro and micro management. It's travel, nutrition, planning, so these players get the nutrition they need on the go. They do a lot of traveling for games constantly. We've got extra competitions this year, so they have to be able to make sure that the players are getting all the nutrition they need at the right times in the right way. And we don't have players eating shit because they're on the road and they're starving. They also need to be able to work individually with players to suit metabolism, to body types, to injury profiles. Every player is different, not just mentally, but also physically. And then you want the pathway people, the linkers, the youth linkers, if you like. Cardiff City got some real talent in the young, in the development teams, like real serious talent. But for too long, there's been like this disconnect over the years between that academy and the first team, and it feels like a lot of players never quite get that opportunity over the years. I think it's got better in recent years, and obviously it's a very exciting period now with the new manager. But historically, it feels like there's been a few which have slipped through the net, and there's been a few who could have been given an opportunity in the first team and weren't. So what sorts of roles will help that link, will help make those things happen? You've got a head of academy, but what about a head of academy development who's focused solely on that pathway to 18s, 21s to the first team? Of course, the head of academy in Gavin Chesterfield, or the 21s manager in Darren Pearce, or the 18s manager or Matt Bloxham, all these different things, they're all going to have input. They're all going to have views on individual players, but having someone who can manage that pathway could be very handy. This could align 21s, 18 playing styles with what Brian Barry Murphy does. It's a bit like a technical director, but for the academy, I guess. They ensure that those personal development plans are not just implemented, but then they're tracked and regularly monitored. They maintain the regular communication and dialogue with Brian Barry Murphy's staff. It's, again, all about linking together and supporting the club to get the best out of everybody. A transition coach is a really interesting one as well. So this is a pretty new role in modern football. A transition coach is someone who supports the young players emotionally and tactically. It's someone who they can sit down with and talk through stuff. If they're struggling with the pressure, they could talk to them about that. If they're struggling to understand the tactical side of football as they move through the age groups and it gets more tactical, then they can sit with that. They can sit in on senior sessions, 21s. They can bridge that expectation gap, because there is a lot of pressure on these young guys. And I was speaking to someone before, and like, Normally, when a young player or a youth player comes into the first team, the first couple of games is like a free hit. Just go and enjoy yourself. Go play your natural game. No tactical instructions. Just go do your thing. After that sort of 3 or 4 games, that's when they'll start loading them up with tactical information, whether you're a left back, a centre back, whoever it may be. And at the end of the day, we've got all these talented players. In particular, you've got the likes of Louis Giles, Dylan Lawler, who are going to really push on this season. And if we're going to help them succeed, having someone who they can get support from is vital, in my opinion. And look, a lot of these roles, and that including the one I'm going to talk about next, are probably covered by one person. Like, I know Darren Pearce has had a big input in this loan pathway thing, which we're going to talk about now. But I just wish Cardiff would start to really get with the game from top to bottom and really implement all these different, not all of them, but a lot of these different roles to maximise what they're doing at the football club in every way. Those marginal gains, they matter. Every single aspect of the club, let's get every little drop that we can get out of it by being the best version of that department that we can be. So a loan pathway manager it's the guy, right, who he's constantly watching all the loan players when they're out on loan. He's watching them in real time. He's keeping in constant communication with the loan clubs, getting feedback. How are they doing? What's their attitude? How are they performing? Do they need a rest? Are they injured? Blah, blah, blah. But also keeping in contact with the individual players. How are you doing? How are you settled in? How are you finding it? Have they welcomed you? Are you settled in the area? Blah, blah, blah. These are young guys. So the more support that we can give them, the easier and the better it will be for them and Cardiff City in the long run. Ensuring that they're used properly, in the right position, the right role, the right level, is another thing that this pathway manager could do. But let's move on towards recruitment. Smarter, cheaper, better. Cardiff City have fallen short for probably well over a decade, let's be honest. The scouting, I think, has largely been based on agents and availability, not really profile fit philosophy. So let's fix that. If whoever our head of recruitment is, let's look at that. What traits do they need? Well, they need to be able to create positional profiles before looking at names. So they need to be able to go, right, we need a right back who's experienced, between the age of 26 and 29, really likes to overlap, good on the ball, good technical ability, but is really aggressive. Then you go and match those players up. If Brian Barry Murphy needs a false 9, great. If he needs a holding midfielder or a really aggressive midfielder, look at the traits, build the profiles, then bring in the stats, the Y-Scout, the scouting reports, the analysis. And most of all, they need to then send scouts to actually go watch these guys. I heard a pretty horrifying thing a couple of months ago, that quite often we don't go and watch players in person. That's massive to me, because I think, all the data, the stats, the video clips, it's all great. It's all, you want as big a picture as you can. But there's nothing like the eye test. Nothing like the eye test. And that's what those scouts should be doing, in my opinion. And also, I think, as well as the stats, the tactical, the technical stuff that we should be looking at for every player, I think we also need to be looking at personality, mentality. Do they have, who they hang around with off the pitch? What are they like in the changing room? What what's the family like? What are the people around the player like? Build a full profile. Go full FBI. Build a full profile of every player that you're potentially going to sign, both on and off the pitch, both physical and mental, tactical and technical, everything. It's got to be a full picture, and then maybe you can reduce the amount of mistakes that we make. I think we need to utilise European scouting much more. So having a European scouting system would be vital. You need scouts who work in League of Ireland, in Belgium, in Scandinavia. You need to identify the value in the market before they become expensive and the inflation hits. You need to seek technically good enough, affordable, hungry players. at a good price. So scouring the globe is a no-brainer. Now I get it, Cardiff can't afford to have a scout in every country in the world, but there's plenty of freelance scouts that you can go and target a league for a few months and try and pick out some players from those leagues. I think also having a specialist group of domestic scouts who specifically cover like League One, League Two, the National League, the Welsh League, where they can pick out a player. Because look, say you're watching like League of Ireland or Welsh League, you might have one player who just looks sensational, scored 50 goals in a season, but you need to be able to translate that. Is he good enough? Yes, he's good for the Welsh League, but with the greatest of respect, can that translate to League One? And this is where it's important that they understand the player motivations, player technical ability, but also their ceilings. They could need to be able to track breakout performers in every window. We should have a list of potential breakout performers from some of these leagues. And of course, here's the fun bit. Of course, we got to talk about it. We always do. The football operations team, the long-term thinkers. We don't just need coaches, scouts, physios, analysis. We need the structure above Brian Barry Murphy to enable him to succeed and enable us to take the club forward. So what senior strategic roles can we look at? Well, let's start with the obvious. Director of football. What do you need to be an exceptional director of football? Well, first and foremost, you need to be able to align the club philosophy with every appointment. There has to be a plan. You need to be able to support Brian Barry Murphy with the resources, but also allow him to do his job and not interfere. There's a thin line. You need to be there on a daily basis for him to speak to you, but you don't need to be hovering above him and undermining his decisions. You constantly need to have a 3 to 5 year plan, not just a 3 to 5 week plan. A technical director is a really interesting one, because I think a lot of people think like a sporting director, technical director, and director of football are all the same thing. They are slightly different roles. A technical director is someone who connects the data, the medical, the recruitment, and the coaching staff all together, all those departments together. He converts what the vision is by the manager of the football club, and then he turns it into a process that can achieve it. He'll oversee their personal development plans, the scouting briefs, and anything else, the analysis, things like that. And his basic role is, or responsibility is, to get everyone from the under sevens to the first team and above all moving in the same direction, all playing in the same direction, same way, everyone being on the same page. But it's also bringing all those different departments together. Then you have a head of football administration. So again, this is a different one, and some of these roles will be covered by Ken Cho, say, will do all of these things, or whoever. But a head of football admin is a really important one, because they're the guys who are going to handle the contract offers. They're the ones who are going to handle the negotiations. They're going to handle the registrations, the travel logistics. They're going to ensure that nothing is there to distract Brian Barry Murphy or the players from their day-to-day job, and especially around matches. That head of football admin, his sole role is to take the pressure off all the players, all the coaches, all the managers, and do everything that needs to be done. And then we're going to look at the culture, the communication, the identity of Cardiff City Football Club. Yep, elite clubs don't just play football, they tell a story. They connect with their fans. So let's look at some of the roles that can help with culture. Mental skills, coach, psychologist, whatever you want to call it. Having someone who can work one-on-one with players, talking to them, helping them with the day-to-day pressures of being a football player is massive. Having someone who's adept at resilience training, can implement a group mindset for cohesion and unity within the group, but can also deal with people on a one-to-one basis and give them the support they need to be the best versions of themselves. Media and content is another one where you can help with the culture. How can a media and content strategist help with the culture, you'd say? Well, look, if someone's creating a weekly video content on Cardiff City, if they're documenting the rebuild, if they're humanising the players, telling their story week to week, and the staff and the coaching, for the fan base, that links and that breeds unity between Cardiff City, the fans, the players, the coaches. Everyone's pulling together because everyone understands everybody else's struggles, successes, and the work they're putting in on a daily basis to turn this football club around. And then leadership, mentoring, culture. I don't know what you'd call it, a culture architect. Fuck knows. Look, having someone who can work with senior players to set a tone. So you've got a leadership group within any squad. Having someone assigned to help work with those players to take the pressure off Brian Barry Murphy a little bit and help those senior players to set the tone for the rest of the group. Help Brian Barry Murphy create a clear internal plan, but also be very clear about the standards, the expectations, and the mentality of what he expects from the group and individuals. This will help shape the culture and the standard of the dressing room and the football club, and this breeds down into the academy and more. So, like, rounding up, right, I know this has been a bit of a general one, but I wanted to give an example of some of the roles that I think we should be looking at. And if we've got some of these roles, then great. But let's make sure that every department of Cardiff City is all pulling in the right direction. I really believe we've got the right manager now. Someone who can build for the future and genuinely start the process of taking this club where it should be. Now, of course, there's the takeover stuff, and we have to just ignore that for the time being. But I do believe that whether Vincent Tan sells Cardiff City or not, implementing the right people in the right roles around Brian Barry Murphy is only a good thing. It's only going to move the club forward. But if you want to look at it from a sale point of view, it's only going to make the club more attractive. We've got the coach. Now we need the team behind and around the coach. The scouts, the analysts, the conditioners, the thinkers, the connectors. This isn't a football manager fantasy. This is how the likes of Ipswich got promoted. It's how Brighton became elite. It's how Plymouth planned to get back into the Championship. This is how Cardiff City can finally evolve from an underachieving sleeping giant to a model modern football club. I believe that Cardiff City has everything in place, almost, to go and really push on. But how we move forward, in my opinion, is simple. You build an elite structure. You build a structure that replicates where you want to be. You back Brian Barry Murphy with specialists, thinkers, leaders. You finally turn Cardiff into a progressive powerhouse that's always going to be a threat to the opposition. At the end of the day, it's time for this club to get into 2025. I've said this many times. So let's do it. I really, really wish whoever could make these decisions could just implement it, because I think long term it's massive. In the mid-term and short term, it can be massive. It can make such a difference to every department and every individual and collectively to this football club. This is Cardiff City. This is Rebuilding Cardiff City, the series. This was episode 6. I'm Si. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. As always, my friends, keep the faith. Become a member. Subscribe. All that good stuff. And I'll see you in a bit.